Welcome back to the Carr Builds podcast. Today, we're going to talk about our undergrad architecture experience.
Yeah, what inspired us to get into architecture, external influences or just personal traits, and common perceptions about architecture school, like versus the reality of it.
Yeah, in particular, our experiences. I know there's a lot of people out there that have very different experiences, but I feel like ours is pretty different as well because we grew up in very different places.
Yeah.
So how did you...
Me first?
Yes. How did you get into architecture? First, give us a little bit of your background.
Sure. So born and brought up in Dubai. And I think growing up in Dubai in the 90s and seeing it transform from just flat desert, just sand everywhere around you to what it is now, that is obviously inspirational for someone who is interested in the built environment around you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you got to see
Yeah.
Dubai,
it's a playground. Basically
turn into what it is today. I mean, the Dubai you grew up in, I can only imagine what it is.
Yeah.
It was probably...
It was nothing.
It
was just sand. Like you were in your apartment building because no one was... Expatriates weren't allowed to buy a house back then. And that's it. You knew everyone in your apartment building, like the one school that you went to. It was so sheltered, so close-knit.
Yeah. It's kind of funny that like Americans will often, or let's say Europeans will tell Americans when it comes to architecture and stuff, it's like you don't have old architecture. Like our ancient architecture is Thomas Jefferson's house, which is like a couple hundred years old. Whereas they have 1,000-year-old buildings that are still standing, Roman ruins, things like that. I mean, ancient pyramids and everything. But then when you go from Americans, like I can say our stuff is really old compared to your
40-year-old buildings.
Yeah, the Burj Khalifa.
Yeah.
Things like that.
That's 2009.
Yeah, it's getting old.
Wow.
It's still the tallest though.
Yeah. Yeah, so that was a major contributor. Of course, I went through the phases of I wanted to be a doctor, I wanted to be an archaeologist.
Paleontologist like Ross?
Yeah, archaeologist. I want to be an astronomer. And then 11th grade or so, I was like, okay, I guess I want to be an architect. Because that's what that test that you do in 11th and 12th grade, the aptitude test?
Yes, aptitude test.
So that's what it told me to do. I have either engineering or architecture. I mean, it's at least it wasn't just medicine or engineering because that's what they tell all Indians you can be. And also my cousin brother in Mumbai, he's a couple of years older than me, maybe 6 years or so. He's an architect. So he got into the field first. Yeah,
that's what I was going to ask. Was he an architect before you decided to go down that path?
So I spoke to him about it.
He was in school at that time? Or was he out practicing?
He was out
okay.
practicing.
So he's a lot older than you.
Yeah. Yeah. Because my sister's 4 and he's another 3 or 4 years older than Astrid. Yeah.
So he's 7 or 8.
6 to 7. Yeah, something like that. Yeah, I don't know how old he is. So my cousin is an architect, has his own business in India. So I spoke to him about it. He did not tell me how... He did tell me that it was difficult, but he said it was gratifying. I remember that.
Yeah.
But he's the hardcore architect.
There's a few different types and I've never met him, but he does seem, just seeing his work and he seems very dedicated and just loves the field of design. Yeah. Really.
He still takes part in these design competitions. His company does. And like I went to the cynical side of architecture, being cynical about it very quickly, but he's still passionate about it, which is good.
Either of us have that
puristic, pure.
Yeah, I don't know what to call it. I would say passion, but I would say we're definitely still passionate about architecture in general. It's just we did see a lot of things that made us more cynical.
Yeah.
Not as passionate as we were in school, or at least I'm not.
Okay, so that was why I got into architecture.
So really just an aptitude test?
Yeah. That was it, because my sister she got into engineering, electrical and electronics, and we were both really good at math.
Was hers an aptitude test thing as well?
Hers was, yeah, but she knew she wanted to be an engineer. She just didn't know what type of engineer she wanted to be. Then she got into college, and I'm not sure if she decided before she got into college or after. There might have been like the first year was a general engineering courses, and then she decided she wanted to get into electrical engineering instead of mechanical.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I didn't want that. I was just, I wanted something artistic, because like I went to an Indian school that is just so theory based. They kind of kill any creativity left in your soul. And I was always a creative person as a kid. I wanted to experiment. I would build stuff, break down stuff, try to figure out how things worked. And I was always artistic, like making things. And
you were definitely a maker.
Yeah, I was a maker. Like I wouldn't throw stuff away. I would just like egg cartons, egg shells, and bottle caps, like anything. Just make stuff all day long. And I didn't get that in school. So the moment I got an opportunity to get out of that Indian curriculum, I wanted something creative, and I thought architecture would bring me back to what I would really wanted to do.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah. So, what about you?
Good story.
Good story.
So my story is not that as exhilarating as yours. Mine was really, I didn't know what I wanted to do. And let's go beyond 11th and 12th grade. I'm actually in college before I realized that architecture is something that I'm interested in. And I took aptitude tests in high school. They make you do it, but they just don't make sense to me, aptitude tests.
No, they don't.
Because the way they're worded, and I'm oversimplifying it, but it's like, do you like math? Okay, you should be an engineer. Mm-hmm. Do you like art? Okay, you should be an artist.
Yeah, but this was aptitude tests back in the early 2000s. So, I mean, there are so many new fields out there now. I really hope aptitude tests have changed.
Yeah. So I always sort of catered the aptitude test to be what I wanted it to be. Like I guess it was my freshman year of high school, I took an aptitude test and I made it come out to where I made it to where I would become, it said I should be an anesthesiologist. And I just knew that they were paid really well. So I guess it was all about the money for me back then. But then I went into college and I actually did my first year of college and got the freshman experience as an economics major, meaning I did nothing but basic courses and took macro and microeconomics. So it was really just get your first year under your belt and then figure out what you want to do kind of thing.
Yeah.
And for me, now my parents didn't really want that to be the case. They wanted me to know what I wanted to do, but I guess they were okay with it after a year, me switching into a field that I felt passionate about.
Were they surprised? Did it just come out of nowhere? Hey, I'm getting into architecture, or they knew?
Yeah, because
had you ever mentioned it before?
Okay, so I guess I have to tell this story because this is a story that I like to tell, and I used to tell whenever I was very passionate about the field of architecture. Was I remember one day when I was a little kid running around in the neighborhood, and my grandparents brought their RV, and they parked it in the front yard, not in the front yard, but on the street of our house. And I was playing in the neighborhood, and they would just sort of hang out in there during the day, and they would leave the door open. And I remember one time I ran up to the RV, and my grandfather called me in, and he said, "Hey, Chance," he's like, "You know what you need to do when you get older? You need to become an architect." And I was 7 years old at this time, I guess. And I was
subliminal
like,
message.
Yeah, I was like, okay. And I took off, and and I kind of fell back on that as I got older, and whenever I was really looking for what I wanted to do, because I had no clue going into college what I wanted to do. So I was taking a series of aptitude tests, and they started to come up with a similar pattern of you are talented or you enjoy the fields of art and science.
Oh.
And so it sort of just clicked with me at some point, and because architecture is literally defined as the art and science of building. And so once that sort of clicked in my head, I said, okay, that's what I need to do. And I actually transferred out of the school I was in doing my first year of undergrad because my grades were so bad because I was too busy having the freshman experience, let's say. I transferred out of that school because I could not get into the College of Architecture at that school. And so I went to what seemed to be an easier route and got into the architecture school at Texas Tech University in Lubbock, Texas. And so really...
And you loved it.
Yeah, the passion part hasn't gotten there yet. I mean, I'm like, okay, this seems like what I'm supposed to do. Okay. Yeah. Well, I got into architecture school, and the first course that really got my attention was history of architecture.
Yeah.
And my dad's a history teacher. And so he would always tell these stories about history growing up. And I really liked history. I liked ancient history. I was very much into Greek and Roman history as well.
Still are.
Yeah, as well as medieval history.
Yeah, watching Last Kingdom right now.
Yeah.
Not just because Elon Musk said.
Actually, just because Elon Musk said. But it's good for now.
Yeah, it's good.
So history of architecture really... That's where I found my passion for architecture, because I was understanding more about the culture and the people and the art and the buildings of ancient Greece and Rome. Through that, going through, I might be getting ahead of myself, but going into the other courses, and as you go through the history of architecture, you reach modern architecture, which really, again, struck my minimalist side, and I just was in love with it.
Yeah.
Found the passion. So let's talk a little bit about the schools themselves.
Okay, the schools that we both went to?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I went to Texas Tech University.
Yeah, and I went to the American University of Sharjah.
Sharjah. Which is not actually in Dubai.
No, it's another emirate in the United Arab Emirates. It's about 40 minutes away. So I would drive back and forth.
Yeah, so you commuted from home.
Yeah, lived at home in Dubai and then drove.
Whereas my home was like 8 hours away, so
yeah,
it was a little bit different.
Yeah. So.
But the school itself was very different for you. Like you said, you went to an Indian school.
Yeah.
And then going into this school, you were thrust into just a, what's it called? Like a melting pot of culture.
Yeah. So I went to an Indian school, an all-girls school. And suddenly I'm in this university, and I'm not being racist or anything when I say this, but there were mainly Arabs at this university. I think there were 2 Indians in the entire architecture batch. 3 Indian girls. And it was a culture shock because no one was speaking English in their free time. Everyone was conversing in Arabic, and I had no idea what was going on. And everyone was so confident. It's because they all went to co-ed schools. They all came from a different background, and they knew how to...
They were comfortable.
They were comfortable, yeah. And I had zero social skills.
Yeah.
Because, like I said, my schooling was so theoretical. It was always like, if you memorize this book, you're good to go. There was no practical aspect, no life lessons, nothing.
Yeah. It's kind of like, I'm sure it's on a different scale, but like students in the States coming out of high school and doing their first year in college, it is a shock. Maybe not a culture shock, but just like everything you're exposed to your first year.
Yeah.
Is overwhelming.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah, I'm sure if I had come to the States directly,
oh my gosh,
that would have been overwhelming. And there are lots of people who did that. There are lots of people from my high school who came and did the undergrad in the States. But
so at Sharjah, you had a lot of American professors, correct?
I had well, I had British and American professors. The architecture professors were all American, but my English teachers, they were British.
So this was an American university.
Yes.
Is the
American curriculum.
yeah. And
Yeah.
through that, you're able to get a professional degree to actually become a licensed architect in the United States.
Yeah, it was a 5-year degree, and it was the only college, I think it still is, I'm not sure, the only college outside the US who had a professional accredited degree
Oh, wow.
in the entire world.
So for you, were you
So it was a big
thinking ahead at the beginning to, I want to be a licensed architect in the United States, I need to go to this school? Was it that specific?
No, we got the accreditation when I was in my 4th year.
Oh,
Yeah.
were you grandfathered in?
Yes.
Oh,
well,
okay.
well, the people who I don't know about that because I hadn't graduated yet. So when I was my 4th year of undergrad, the college was accredited. So by the time I graduated, I got an accredited degree.
Okay.
But I don't know about the people who graduated before me. I don't think they were, maybe for
Right.
like 1 or 2 years before, but not everyone who had graduated.
It's kind of interesting
before.
how some schools will bounce in and out of that threshold, like being accredited versus unaccredited.
Really? They do that?
Yeah, because they have to like reapply to, is it NCARB or NAAB? They have to like show students work and say, hey, we're actually doing.
I remember when they were applying for it, was this, everyone was on edge. And it was like, produce as much work as you can, pin it over any blank wall in the entire building, put your work up.
Make
So-
it look like you're busy.
all the time, like the moment they step in, anywhere they look, they have to see work everywhere. Like models were placed out in the middle in the hallways. Oh my God, the building was so beautiful.
Yeah, that's one thing I wanted to get to, because I know and in another episode we're going to discuss our master's program at the University of Cincinnati,
Yeah.
where we went together, and that's where we met. So
But AUS set my expectations so high. Like amazing, incredible college, great professors, great program, brand new building that had been renovated, like, and they had people cleaning the building all day long, from morning till night, because people were working there till 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. People were cleaning the building at 2 a.m. or 12 a.m. Like spotless. It's so beautiful. We need to go there. We didn't go there the last time we went to Dubai.
I'd love to go there.
And then I come to the States, to the University of Cincinnati, where they don't even provide you a chair. You have to buy your own stool to sit on in your studio.
Or you stand.
And it was a dump.
Yeah.
So, my gosh, that was a shock.
Yeah, at Texas Tech, the building is just the most brutalist 1950s building there is, which does not match anything else on the campus. Everything else on the campus is like this Roman platter-esque style of architecture, and this building just sticks out like a sore thumb.
Yeah.
But obviously, it's the architect's building. It's 10 stories, and it's just the same thing repeated all the way up. And so it was like, oh, this year your studio's on the 3rd floor. Oh, this year your studio's on the 7th floor. It's like, okay, I just got to go ride the elevator a little bit longer.
Yeah.
But I mean, it was bare, minimal, simple. And at the time I thought it was kind of crappy, but after going to Cincinnati, I was like, man, that place was pretty cool. I mean, it was,
bash Cincinnati in the
there
next
was no
episode.
AUS from the
Yeah.
pictures I've seen, but it was, I mean, they provided chairs, so
Yeah.
already 100% better.
Yeah. So college was great. I mean, it was this freedom in a good way. I'm not talking about freedom where, oh, I can drink, I can go date and all that stuff. It's this, like, I finally got this good quality, well-rounded education. And I felt valued in school. I was a good student. I was in extracurricular sports like swimming, badminton, all this stuff, but I never felt valued at my school. And I appreciate the education and all that. I mean, till today, it's affected me. But I never felt valued. And then I go to college and I have all these opportunities, and I loved architecture. I got to be a writing center teacher, writing center fellow. I was in the swim team. I was in the badminton team, and it was an amazing 5 years. And to top it off, it was free.
Yeah, you got it paid for through
You got a full
scholarships.
scholarship. So it was
Yeah, so that's
that was
what's
great.
crazy to me is that you were not strictly doing architecture.
Yeah.
You were as involved as most people are during their undergrad outside of architecture school.
I'm so glad I did that, because there's this perception that if you're an architecture student, you have to be in the studio all day long, all night long. There's nothing you can do other than architecture. And I didn't do that. I didn't pull a single all-nighter, and I made good grades, and I had 2 minor degrees too. I had a minor in interior design and a minor in design management. And I did all that in 5 years. I'm glad.
Quite an accomplishment.
I know. Yeah.
Now, about the only extracurricular activity I was involved in was working.
Oh, you did? Yeah.
I worked my first few years of architecture school, but I actually, after doing a summer internship at an architecture firm, when I went back to Lubbock to go back to school, I made the choice I was offered my job back. I was working at a coffee shop and a golf course. I was offered my job back, and I was so in love with architecture that I wanted to be at the studio building all day long. And I did not want work to get in the way of that.
Yeah.
Which is kind of something I regret. I liked the balance that work gave me.
Yeah.
Because you do get sucked in to that 24/7 mentality of that's all you're doing. That's all you're
It's not
thinking about.
healthy.
No, it's not. And it's not necessary.
And it's not necessary. Exactly.
It's fun. I mean, it was fun for me because I had a lot of good friends and we hung out, and I mean, we didn't really do that much work. And that's sort of the thing is, they're up there working the whole time. Well, actually you go up there and you're like, hey, let's go do this. Let's go kick the soccer ball around. Let's go look at this, watch this presentation. And then, I'm just on my computer. I'm doing other homework. And then you get around to start doing your studio work, and then someone else calls you over. Hey, look at this cool thing I did, or look at this thing I saw. And before you know it, it's 2 or 3 a.m. and you're like, oh crap, I really have a deadline tomorrow, and I do need to
pull an all-nighter.
Do something. Yeah. So I pulled plenty of all-nighters in my time.
Yeah, I intentionally sacrificed having a social life because I wanted to do stuff.
No, I'm not saying I had much of a social life.
But you had friends, and you spent time with them and all that. And I did have some friends, but I didn't. I chose not to just be in the studio all the time.
So we talked about a misconception for architecture students that you have to be at the building 24/7, constantly doing your work. Well, there's a few more misconceptions we want to discuss, but one of them is that architects are technical. Like after you get an architecture degree, you know so much, and you're a very technical person, and you're good at math.
Yeah. That's the first thing they say. Oh, you have an architecture. Oh, you must be good at math.
You must be good
you
at
must
math.
be good at drawing.
Yeah.
No.
Which is funny because we're both
good at math.
We're both good at math, but
it is not a requirement. And most people who are in studio weren't good at math.
Yes. I took calculus just as an elective, just because I wanted to in college, and it was not required, and it was super easy, but there were people that struggled with it. Yes. That were architects, the same as I was.
Yeah.
But really we were required 2 math classes, like geometry and trig, and never even used it in architecture school. Mm-mm. And really don't use it in the real world either.
And even the technical aspect. Nope. It's all design. It's all design.
Yeah. Something interesting about Texas Tech was whenever I was getting into Texas Tech, and after I'd already started there, the people that knew about it, or I don't know if they knew about it, but it had this perception of being a technical school.
Okay.
Oh, I wonder why. Texas Tech.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Well,
just the name.
I don't know what they people always told me, oh, Texas Tech architecture is a very technical architecture program. Like they teach you a lot of the details and things like that. And I don't know if it was that way at some point, but when going through school, it was very much design oriented.
Yeah.
Like not much technical at all in the program. And I really enjoyed that. And I'm glad it was that way because that helped me open up my creativity.
Yeah.
And because you get the technical when you're in the real world.
Yeah. I mean, there's a huge disconnect. We got a little taste of the technical in grad school, which we'll talk about next week. But the undergrad education was just theoretical, just design, like explore your creativity, just expand your creativity.
So I was talking about how Texas Tech was considered a technical school for architecture, and in going through the program, and maybe it was just that they were transitioning from a technical program to a more design-oriented program, which I'm very glad that was the case because I enjoyed the design side. It helped me open up my creativity.
Yeah.
But you really don't get much technical experience in architecture school. I mean, you may do one wall section or something, but even then it doesn't make sense.
No, it doesn't make sense at all. Or even showing I-beams in your tiny models. Oh my gosh, it's so stupid.
Yeah. We were asked
build I-beams?
No, in one of my last semester, we were asked to do like a BIM course where we coordinated and integrated an HVAC system and plumbing and electrical into our building that we designed. And I look back at some of the screenshots and the renderings and stuff, and I'm like, holy cow, what was I thinking?
No, they didn't even ask us about that.
Yeah, and they probably shouldn't. Like, as architects in the real world, I mean, you shouldn't try to do something that you can't.
That's true, but
I don't know if that doesn't. I don't know if that came out the right way, but
yeah. But the thing is, I think architects are like the jack of all trades.
Yeah, master of none.
Yeah. So having more of a knowledge about MEP and lighting and construction feasibility, construction science, all that stuff, just a basic knowledge of it, I think it's necessary.
Yeah. Now I think we're getting into a different subject, but yeah, being out in the real world, our experience from both sides, from the architecture side and from the contractor side, like seeing how architects think that they know so much about the building where they really don't, and they're really not providing the other trades what they need.
There's a huge disconnect, and also there's this superiority that you're kind of taught. I don't know if they do it intentionally or it's subconsciously that, oh, you made it to architecture school. You're way better than the engineers.
They spent those long nights at the architecture building.
Yeah. They couldn't handle this. You can, so you're better than them. And that translates into the real world too. Like they think they are better than them. I don't know.
They're not paid as good as them.
No, not paid as good. That's why the engineers are happy to just be quiet and let the architects think what they want. And they're pocketing all the money.
One little misconception that I like that people tell me is like, oh, you're an architect. That should be a podcast we do. Oh, you're an architect, so.
What do you mean?
And just like things that people say, so you can do this, so you can do this.
Okay. No, that would be interesting.
So one of the things that people often say when I say I'm an architect, or I was trained as an architect, oh, you must be able to draw really well. Yeah. Oh, you must be able to write really well. And
your handwriting must be really good.
Yeah, and I'm like, no, I actually write like a 12-year-old. It's bad. I write in all caps, but it looks like a 12-year-old. Mm-hmm. And the drawing side of things.
Like we had one drawing class, maybe.
Yeah. So our first year at Tech, you are not allowed to use a computer. Your whole first year, which is kind of cool, but it is very quickly outdated. Like it doesn't seem. I don't know if they do that anymore.
Probably not.
But whenever, like, I kind of sucked at that that part of architecture school. Like I struggled
Yeah.
at drawing clouds and flowers and things like that.
Oh, we weren't asked to draw any of that.
But then when it got to using the computer, which I could kind of use as one of the things that got me into architecture, was seeing all these cool renderings of these buildings and stuff. And I'm like, oh, they generated that on the computer. I like computers. I like this field. And so whenever I got to be able to use the computer, I really felt like I caught up and became one of the better students.
That's second year.
Yeah, second year and beyond. Yeah.
Yeah. So we had, in our first year, there were two different professors. One who was like your professors and said, oh, go to this part of the building, draw what you see. Go to this part of the building, draw what you see. Luckily, I didn't have that professor. I had another professor who was just like, oh, just make something. We don't have to draw at all. So I'm glad. I think the one time I did have to draw like perspective, just took a photo, blew it up, printed it. Oh, printing was free at AUS, by the way.
Oh yeah, that's insane.
On the plotters, color plotters.
Weren't you able to use like the laser cutter and stuff as well?
Oh yeah, free laser cutter, free 3D printer.
3D printer. Oh wow.
3D, yeah, but not ceramic. Yeah, ceramic 3D printer, the one with ceramic particles, not the filament, the expensive stuff. It was like $1 million printer. The $1 million lab that they set up. So I think there were 2 3D printers, a laser cutter. I'm not sure if they had a CNC, but yeah. And then free plotters. It was awesome. But at the end, I think in 5th year, they started giving us a credit of like 250 dirhams or something like that, that you could use towards printing because people just went crazy and exploited that. Anyway, yeah, so I just blew up that photo and went and traced it on one of the light boxes.
Yeah, that was what a lot of people did, was just tracing of things. But we were asked to draw clouds and flowers and things like that, which to me at the time was like,
why
what in the world? We did my first year we did one technical drawing of a chair.
Oh.
Where we did like an isometric plan view and an elevation view.
We did have a boat.
A boat?
Yeah, and built it too. I remember that.
So you were talking about plotters. I was thinking of this story that of how we used the plotters at Tech, which we had to pay for. I mean, it was not near as expensive as it was at Cincinnati.
Oh, that was ridiculous.
Which at Cincinnati, not to jump ahead, but you actually had to go find someone who had a printer and print. Remember that the only guy that would print on watercolor paper was the guy that was in the master's program in the floor below us.
And he
charged us.
And he had print. On his phone, I remember you had to pay him.
Yep.
My gosh, that was ridiculous.
Because it was either do that or pay twice as much and to get it done at the lab, and it probably wouldn't come out right then. And they may not even have the paper.
Yeah.
I mean,
and you'd buy your own paper.
Yeah, it sucked. Sorry, we're getting ahead.
Yeah. It's laying the groundwork for the next podcast.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So
your story about printing.
Yeah, story about printing. So in 2008, for the sports fanatics out there, Texas Tech was actually really good at football that year. One of the few years. And College Game Day came to our campus whenever we were playing the University of Texas. And we made signs for College Game Day and printed them out on the plotters there. No. And that's what we spent our time doing in studios. So the last misconception about, not the last, but one of the last misconceptions that we're going to discuss about architecture school is that it will prepare you for the real world of architecture.
People think that?
Yeah.
Really?
I mean, I still get asked to this day, like, maybe not to this day, but oh, you can design a house. Oh, you can do this and that because you're an architect. It's like, oh, I just graduated from architecture school. Oh, will you come look at this and design this for me?
Yep.
It's like, what? I just made up buildings and
I crumpled paper, threw it across the room, and that was my project.
Yeah, that turned into my project.
Yeah. Nope. Don't know anything about construction. Don't know anything about how materials come together. don't know how a house is built, how it functions. We know how to design.
Yeah. And to me, I think the problem is that there's so much emphasis on the studio class of architecture school. At least it was for me. And they made a point of not allowing any other course to interfere with studio work. Like we had like you have your structures course, your construction materials course, your computers and architecture course. Well, those courses, they weren't allowed to really challenge you that much because they couldn't interfere with studio work.
Yeah, that's true.
And then we were constantly reminded of that.
Yeah.
It's like, you should be working on studio. You should be working on this design, this fictitious building that would never work, that has no budget, versus studying, not necessarily studying, but focusing on the
Something
materials
really
and
valuable.
things like that.
That's true. That's a very good point.
So that brings me to the positive of the University of Cincinnati, and that was their co-op program.
Yeah.
Which we'll talk about next week. But.
Yeah, because I didn't have any real, wow, that came out. I didn't have any real, because I didn't have any work experience in undergrad. We had one internship at an architecture firm in Dubai. And then I remember the second internship was in 2008, right when the crisis hit, and nobody wanted to hire, not even as free labor. I wasn't even paid during my first internship. Second internship, forget it. We're not even accepting anyone. So they just put a bunch of us in a room at the college, at the university, and then two of our professors decided to, took pity on us and said, okay, here's a make-believe project, work on it. And that's what we did that summer. Wow. Because there was nothing to do.
My first architecture internship was for minimum wage in 2008. And that was, I think that was when it had gone up to $7.25 an hour. Yeah, so I was making bank. Fortunately, I was in the same town as my sister and brother-in-law, and they were gracious enough to let me stay with them.
We didn't make that much more doing our co-ops. Anyway, we'll talk about that.
Yeah. But that's jumping ahead.
Mm-hmm. So it kind of gives you a taste of how pitiful the wages are in the architecture field. Mm-hmm. But
so what kind of person should pursue? I mean, we've talked a lot of bad about architecture, but what kind of person should pursue an undergraduate degree in architecture?
Would you do it again? Would you?
No.
No?
No. It's hard to say.
Yeah.
I can't really go back. Like, I loved it and I enjoyed it.
And it's shaped who you become now.
The biggest thing for me is that so many people, I didn't realize this, but you can get your undergraduate degree in anything and then get your master's in architecture and then become a licensed architect.
That's true.
If your master's degree is a professional program, gives you that professional degree. And so there's so many people that go down that path that I'm a little jealous of, because they were able to get that taste of something else.
Yeah.
And I know in architecture, you learn a lot about various different things, but that would have been something nice to delve into, to see if I really, knowing that I could hop into it later.
Like I would have done my bachelor's in architecture and then an MBA, something like that. I really wanted to get an MBA. And again, this is next week's topic. Cincinnati actually had a joint MArch and MBA program that they stopped the year before we got there. And I was really wanted to do that, but they don't provide it anymore.
You say that and you remind me of a story about how I got into Texas Tech's architecture program.
Oh yeah, that's a good story. Sneaky.
Yeah, so let's throw this one at the end and let's wrap it up that way.
Okay.
So like I said, my grades were bad my first year of college. And in order to get into the architecture program, you had to have a GPA of 3.0. Well, at Texas Tech, in order to get into the business program, you did not have to have that high of a GPA. And so I applied to get a dual major in both architecture and business. And so in doing that, if you could get into one of the colleges, you could get into them both. Mm-hmm. And so I was accepted in that. And then whenever we went to go sign up for our courses, I just told my counselor, I just said, yeah, I'm not doing that. And just threw out the business side of it and stuck with architecture.
And they were fine with it?
Yeah, they were fine with that. They were like, oh, okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's bold.
It worked out in the end.
Yeah.
Even though I'm not working in an architecture firm.
I was so sure I wanted to get into architecture. I applied to one college after high school. Applied to one college for one program. That's it. And I got it, the full scholarship. They said write something down as your second option. So I wrote civil engineering because I thought that was kind of related to architecture. Not really, but that was my second choice. But that's it. That's all I...
So you say one thing, like, if you could go back, would you do it again? And the more I think about it, the more I say, yes, I would, because I learned a lot and I really enjoyed, I think the thing I learned the most in architecture school is attention to detail. Mm-hmm. Like when it comes to putting up your presentation for your final review, like I was I don't know what the term is. I don't want to use the term that I like to use, but I was a stickler.
Meticulous.
Yes, I was very meticulous, and I was a stickler for my fonts all had to align. Mm. Everything had to be in the right location. Nothing could be misaligned. There had to be enough white space on the page. And just the design and presentation aspects of architecture school are what I enjoyed the most.
I didn't do that. I just, because I was splitting my time and I said, that's ridiculous. I'm not going to waste time on that. It's not ridiculous. To me, it was. And I said, no, I've got two jobs. I've got a swimming competition coming up. I've got the other stuff. I want to say the bare minimum, but I did enough in studio. I just did enough to get like an A- or B+ or something like that. And it wasn't I never had the best design, except when I won that Bank of America and I won like
the signal box wannabe.
Yes. I won like 10,000 dirhams or something like that. That was a surprise. And my final project where I had an independent study, those two I actually put a lot of effort into, but everything else I did enough, had enough stuff up there on the wall, but I didn't get meticulous and crazy about the font or the renderings, the appearance or all that stuff. It was just get the project out there. I am not sacrificing my sleep time over this.
So my group was in the opposite train of thought. We would spend so much time, like we would sit there and say, hey, how much did you offset that font? Was it 1/8 of an inch? Oh, is that the same as that gap over here? No, that's actually 3/16. Yeah, you should probably fix that. And I am not kidding. That is what we did.
Oh my gosh.
And so you said you barely got by. Well, we barely got by because we spent so much time doing that. And by the end of the day, it was like, oh crap, I didn't build a model. And so we just pin up whatever we had at the end. Hilarious. And it was like, it looked good, but then it was like, well, what was your project? It's unfinished. And it's like, yeah. Oh,
that's funny. For me, it was like, okay, I've got 10 things on my checklist. Check them all off. They're all like 80%, 75%. That's fine. I got all things checked. There you go.
I'm done. I can go for a swim.
That was my attitude towards it.
So architecture is not all that bad.
No, it's not. It was fun.
Brings back some good memories.
Yeah. But the type of people who want to get into it, you have to be dedicated. You can't half-ass it.
Yeah.
Either in college or in the workplace. You have to be passionate to a degree. And it's not easy. It's not something you can just coast through.
But I would not recommend that you... I would recommend you you investigate what it really is in the real world, and understand that the negative side of it as well, just like with any other topic.
Yeah, it's what do they call it? Labor of love, but I don't know what the final outcome is. What your license? That's the baby that you get through after going through 40 years of hell.
Yeah. Okay. So join us next week as we talk about our graduate experiences at University of Cincinnati.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening. See
Bye.
ya.